So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Charlie, and I have never ever said Shelly's last name correctly, so I'm going to let Shelly say her last name. Even though I'm related to Shelly, I always still say the last name wrong.
Are you? You must not be German.
And we're tonight we're gonna be giving you all some amazing information on taking care of your plants. Shelly actually has a Facebook page that she can tell you about. If we can go ahead and start with that, Shelly, give them some background in terms of what you're doing on Facebook, because Shelly gives a lot of really good information on her Facebook group. So if you're a gardener, you're just getting started in gardening, or something that you just like, it's a hobby and you're wanting to learn more, that you've come at a for a really good night, because Shelly is a master gardener. She knows what she's talking about. I'm going to back away and let Shelly give you some intro, and then just jump right in. And Shelly, when you want me to change a page, you just tell me.
All right. I appreciate it, Charlie. So, by the way, my last name is pronounced Gravine, even though it looks like Greywind because it's German. So, a lot of the Gravines out there have changed the pronunciation to Greywind just because it's easier, but my husband's family has not done that, so we have to comply. But anyway, so I don't know how long I've been gardening, using essential oils actively in the garden, several years now. And what got me started doing this is I needed to find a solution to my specific problems that I was having. And I'll give you a little background on that. My property is very, very difficult to garden on. I live in the middle of, lots and lots, acres and acres of forest. And right near Smith Mountain Lake, my neighbors are on the water. I am not. So, we've got the water there. We've got the forest. And I don't have enough sunshine. I don't have enough sunlight on my property, and not enough airflow, again, because of the forest surrounding us. And so my property really has been, for the past 20 years, I would say we've been here 25 years, but about 20 years ago, it started just becoming, I lovingly call it fungus farm, because it's just one big mass of fungal disease. Everything gets fungal disease. My flowers, my vegetable garden, my trees have fungal disease. It's horrible, and it is my biggest enemy here. And so a couple years ago, several years ago actually, I actually quit trying to vegetable garden, and which was just really hard for me because my mom always had a vegetable garden that I helped her with. And when we when I grew up and got my own home, we shared a garden on my property. And so it's something I've just always done and always enjoyed. And I finally had to give it up because I just couldn't grow anything anymore. It would die of fungal disease issues. And then I also battle deer and everything else. So it's just one big, huge, massive battle. And after about 2 years of not vegetable gardening, I just really, really missed it. And I really wanted to try it again. So I actually sat down and just made a plan. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. And this is kind of before raised beds were a huge thing that they are now. It was kind of prior to that. And I thought, well, because I also have heavy, heavy clay, I can't grow anything in my own soil either. And then I have water runoff that runs through the property. So I forgot to mention that, which feeds the fungal disease, of course. So I had to find a solution to all of those problems. So I decided the answer was raised beds. And then I decided, because, you don't have as much space with raised beds, I was going to grow vertically, like ultra vertical. And so I have raised beds with trellises, and I grow everything I possibly can straight up in the air. so that I can fit hundreds and hundreds of plants in there. And I decided by growing vertically, I would maybe avoid some of the fungal disease issues because I'll have better airflow and all of that. Well, and then I realized, okay, I've also got to come up with a pruning system to keep, for example, tomatoes under control, so that they get proper airflow, which will prevent fungal disease as well. So I just made this plan to do all of that and to fight it. And I think I did that maybe 1 year before I decided I needed to make my own fungal spray, antifungal spray, because I was still having fungal disease issues. Yes, it was better, but it was still, I was still not able to use a lot of my plants because of fungal disease. I mean, I get it on my Swiss chard and my kale, everything would get it. And so I realized then that I needed to make a spray because all the sprays that I was trying, and believe me, I've tried every single thing out there, nothing worked at all. It was like I was just throwing my money away. And so I just did some research and came up with a spray that I felt would work with these oils, because at this time then I was using, doTERRA essential oils. And so anyway, to make a long story short, because we'll touch on that later, that was what made me able to garden. That's what sealed the deal, and opened up this possibility of having this beautiful, abundant garden.
So I have a question for you, Shelley, real quick.
Sure.
There are probably going to be some people who either are live with us right now or watching later who maybe really are curious and interested, and they're beginners, and they feel like, I don't know anything about it. I think that this is really good because it gives us some solutions to, not everybody's going to have the same exact issues that you're talking about with fungus, depending on where they are, right? So not every area that you're living in, you have a lot of issues with moisture.
Yes.
Someone else, it might be certain
people on the West
pests.
Coast, for example, don't typically have those issues.
Right. And the other thing I just want to bring up is if something, if there are challenges that you're having as a new gardener, and if even if we don't have the answer tonight for you, we'll get the answer for you. But don't, this is a thing that Shelley does. She's got as I mentioned before, a group that talks all about all these topics on a regular basis. So the other thing I want to make sure, and I didn't say this in the beginning, is, that's the reason why Shelley's community exists. If you want to join her group and you want to learn more, and say you have questions that aren't, that come up and you're not sure what to do, we want to offer you continued community and support. I know Shelley is here for that reason. It's something she's super passionate about. So we don't want this just to be a one-off, hey, here's some sprays, thanks for joining us. Just know that you're supported. And if you're a new gardener, it's something that you're really excited about. We want to support that. So I'll keep my mouth shut now. Sorry.
No, that's a good point, because I enjoy it. This is what led me to wanting to teach these things, because I've figured it out. I've figured out how to grow vertically, how to smash a lot of plants in a small area, and be successful with it. I've figured it all out. So I love sharing with people, and I love helping people. And so, yes, please join my group page. I've got the very last page of this presentation gives some details there, but it's called Bountiful Earth Garden Club. And it's a Facebook group, and I just post educational material there, and you can ask questions anytime concerning what I post. You can, any member can post a question that comes up, regardless. You can private message me, you can text me, you can email me. I don't care. I'm happy to help. And so yeah, don't ever be afraid to ask. That's what I like doing. I just love helping, and I love sharing this because this was life-changing for me. So
And I will, just so you know, Shelley, I will go ahead for those of you who are, because we have some listeners, some people who have joined in from the Facebook group. I'm going to go ahead and post in the chat here while Shelley continues. I will go ahead and grab the link for her group for the Bountiful Earth Garden Club, and I'll put the link in the chat here if you're here in Zoom, and I'll also post it in the Facebook page in the comments so you all have it. Okay.
great. So I'm sure everybody's read this first page here, so you can go ahead and go to the second page for me, Charlie. Okay, so this is kind of an odd
Okay, hold on, Shelley. Give me a minute. I have no
I think
idea
I'm
what's
getting
going
two
on here.
pages at once.
Yeah, hold on just a second.
There we go.
Yeah, why is it doing that?
Oh,
That's really weird.
that's weird.
That's really weird.
Well, it's the next page, so that's fine.
Okay.
I'll just be able to do two at once.
Okay.
So, some of you already know this. What is an essential oil? It's a natural aromatic compound. I can't even talk. Found in plants. They're either steam distilled or cold pressed for extraction, and they offer powerful, safe benefits without side effects. And they do this both for us and for plants. It's how plants defend themselves, and so it's only natural that essential oils are very effective to use in the garden. The essential oils can protect your plants from insects, fungal disease, and viral diseases. But they can also protect you from mosquitoes, other bites, well, actually, it can deter pests, but then it can also, soothe your bites, treat your injuries, and support skin that has been exposed to the sun. You can protect your pets and animals from this as well. And the whole purpose of this whole thing is to reduce toxic load. There are so many things out there that you can purchase, at the store, at Lowe's or whatever, but most of them are toxic, and we don't need that in our bodies. We don't need it in our food. We don't need it on our bodies. So, just like using the natural cleaning products indoors, we can use natural pest and disease control outside. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing beats the effectiveness of the essential oils. And, because they're even safe for your children and for your pets. So here's just a couple of little recipes. You can make your own hand soap. And Charlie, you're going to post this too, so people can actually download it as well, right? If they want to keep this.
Absolutely. I'll throw it up in the group. I'll throw it up in the group as well. Yeah.
Yeah. You can use it, and then here's another recipe that you can use to clean your tools. And so, just make sure you snatch that up so that you can do this. And I've got other things that obviously I use other doTERRA products. So I use, the doTERRA hand soap, and I use the On Guard spray to clean my tools, but whatever you have, some people like to make their own, and some people like to use what we have provided by doTERRA. So, okay, you can go to the next page. So for a natural pest repellent, I use TerraShield. We have a mosquito problem, not because of the lake, I don't think, because our neighbors don't have mosquitoes, but there is a pond right below us. And so and it's not our pond, it belongs to the neighbors, but we have a major mosquito issue here because of it. And so I do use TerraShield. They have a spray as well. And my husband and I both use that, and it's very, very effective. I really like using it, and I feel it's very effective. But we also, I want to throw this out there too, because I get asked this question a lot. For this pond, we throw mosquito dunks in there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with those, but that is a natural way to kill mosquito larvae. It's like using BT or nematodes. It's organisms that feed on the larvae of mosquitoes without hurting any of the other life that's in the pond. So we do that. If we didn't do that, I don't think we'd be able to even step outside our doors. It's so bad. So so into the gardening with essential oils now, and now I gotta see if I can move there we go, because it's covering up my page here. Okay, every garden has its own unique microclimate and ecosystem. So, I already told you what mine is like. Yours may not be the same, but the same as with our bodies, healthy plants can defend themselves against pest and disease better than unhealthy plants. Yeah, it's the same thing for us. Have your garden soil tested, use compost, and plan your garden layout for maximum benefit. If you really put the research and the plan into it, you'll have a much more successful garden. Gardening with nature, there are many different ways you can use not just essential oils, but nature itself to help you in your garden. And one of those things, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, is companion planting. Planting alliums and French marigolds in your gardens can help deter pests. Alliums, it's basically the scent that will deter, deer and other pets. And so I will plant, like my little green onions, I'll plant clumps of those, and also chives, things like that, throughout my garden, just to kind of throw off the scent. What it does is that scent there will kind of mask the scent of the neighboring plants. And that's what helps keep the deer and the insect pests away from those plants. French marigolds, that's kind of a different, that works in a different way. The French marigolds, not all marigolds, but the ones that are the French marigolds, their roots release a chemical that actually deters the bad nematodes that will, feed on your roots, the roots of your plants. And so that's the reason French marigolds are good to use in your garden. But they also will attract pollinators and things like that, and they're beautiful. They help make your vegetable garden beautiful. So there's many reasons to use them in your garden. Companion planting and interplanting herbs such as thyme, rosemary, basil, lavender, and sage here and there throughout your garden can deter pests and improve growth and vitality of the plants. Like how I mentioned earlier, the scent will throw the pests off. But these herbs also, you've heard of planting basil and tomatoes next to each other because tomatoes love basil. So, it just really helps the vitality as well of the plants. Encouraging birds to your garden and keeping chickens and ducks can reduce the need to handpick pests from your plants. Chickens and ducks love to eat slugs and all kinds of little critters around your garden. As long as, they don't get in there and trample your garden and pick at your plants, so you have to kind of watch them when they're out there, but it is a good way to kind of clean up those things around the garden. Encouraging birds in the area. Yes, birds can also be a little bit of a nuisance sometimes, but the birds also eat a lot of the pests. And we feed our birds very, very close to the garden. And, they come in there, they come right in there with me. They're so friendly. and they'll sit there and chatter, and it's really kind of fun. It sounds nice having the birds singing right there in the garden with you. Um, Also, you can use row covers to protect cabbage and squash families. You can use row covers to protect anything that needs protection, but you don't want to cover your flowering plants, ones that need pollinators in order to produce. Not all plants do, but especially use them to protect plants in the cabbage, the brassica family, because those cute little white butterflies that flutter around, they lay their eggs on those and produce what's called the cabbage worm, and they will completely devour your brassicas in a couple of days. So I used to fight this. I didn't want to cover my stuff because I thought, oh, it's so pretty. And you have to watch them. You have to examine your plants closely under the leaves daily to make sure there aren't eggs or little worms on your plants. And I decided, because I have such a large garden, it's just a lot less heartbreaking just to put a row cover over those plants. And so I've kind of resorted to that for my kale and my cabbage and my bok choy, those plants, those are all in the brassica family. So do consider that. And they don't need pollinators because you don't really want them to flower, because then that ends their life. The idea is to eat the leaves. So if you aren't trying to produce fruit, it's perfect. Also, planting native flowering plants in your garden will attract pollinators. Now, I do a lot of this. Number one, it's beautiful. But number two, I have bees buzzing everywhere in my garden. And I mean, I can hear them. It's nice. And whenever I have an area of my garden, for example, last year, my tomatillos, I had thousands and thousands and thousands of flowers, but they weren't really producing. And I realized the bees weren't really getting back there to them because they're at the very back end of my garden. And so I found that salvias, I like Mystic Spires. It's a pretty tall salvia, but I have found that they really attract the bees. I mean, the bees are just covering them. And so I just planted one in a pretty pot, and moved that to the back side of my garden just to kind of lure the bees back there. And that seemed to do the trick. So they eventually started producing. And so little tricks like that. My tomatillos were fairly close to my squash. And so it also helped bring the bees to the squash as well. So, think of things like that to help bring those pollinators in there. Not everything needs a pollinator to produce, but those that do, the flowering plants will help tremendously. Okay, Charlie, move on. So we touched on companion planting before, and here's some examples of things that are good to plant together. And again, companion planting helps in many ways. It helps, number one, lure pollinators to the plants. It'll help lure beneficial insects to the plants that actually eat the bad insects. There's a lot of different reasons that these companion plants are good in your garden. For example, nasturtiums, they kind of help your garden in a different way than a lot of these plants. Instead of deterring pests, they actually attract pests. They attract aphids like crazy. And so if you put them near plants that aphids seem to like, or that you always have a problem with aphids, they kind of lure the aphids away from your precious plant. And, unfortunately, the nasturtiums can be covered with them, but it just helps, create that balance. And then you can destroy them if you want. You can spray them with insecticidal soap. They're all in one place, that sort of thing. So just use these plants strategically to help with this. It really, really works. And I do this quite religiously. And then, so the same plants that are good for companion planting, the same herbs, I should say, that are good for companion planting, produce the essential oils that are also good for deterring these pests, or whatever the case may be. So on the next page is a list of oils that specifically deter insect pests. Up on the top there, common garden pests. You'll recognize a lot of those. I mean, there are a lot more, but those are pretty common ones that we see in our garden that you are trying to fight. Okay, Charlie, you can go to the next page. So this is an interesting story. At the doTERRA Aspire convention a few years back, they talked about a garden study that was done in Idaho. And here a farm was losing 75% of its squash and pumpkin crops to squash vine borers and other pests. Now, this farmer began using 1 drop of doTERRA peppermint oil per ounce of water and sprayed his crops once a week. The following year, 90% of his crops survived. Okay, I did not know this story when I started spraying my plants, but let me tell you, this is so true because I've proven this in my garden. I told you my biggest problem is with fungal disease, but I'm using all of these wonderful essential oils in my antifungal spray, and many of them are also pest deterrents. And so I noticed that when I started spraying, this was probably 2-3 years ago. Yeah, it's been 2 summers that I've noticed this, that once I started spraying the antifungal spray as a preventative once a week, I have absolutely no pests in my garden. I know that sounds crazy. I'll get an occasional tomato hornworm, but not even many of those. But I've had no aphids, no squash bugs, nothing, no white flies. And yeah, I noticed that on my own a couple years ago, and I'm like, what? I mean, that's pretty big because that was another battle for me, lots and lots and lots of bugs. They drop on my head while I'm in the garden because I garden vertically, and it was kind of gross. But honestly, I have no pest problems in my garden. And so this is very, very strong.
And the good news is you're not using, very, very toxic pesticides. I
Exactly.
mean, the fact is people don't understand, like even after washing certain vegetables and fruits, if they have a thin skin, you can't tell me that stuff is not. We know that there's definitely absorption that happens with these really,
Absolutely.
really powerful, and that so now you're eating pesticides, right?
Yeah. And what's also really cool now with me, I mean, my husband and I, because he does a lot of the spraying for me because he can get up over the top of those arches and stuff like that. He's a little taller than me. And so the cool thing is, I garden vertically, so I have these arched trellises over my between my raised beds. And so I have tomatoes and squash and other things crawling up over these trellises. And so, basically you walk under them and you've got the plants right over your head. So when you're spraying the plants, you're spraying up over your head and the mist is dropping down on you as you're doing it. And it smells so good. And it's just
you're
real.
giving yourself an essential oil therapy session while you're gardening.
Exactly, exactly. It's just very, very cool knowing that this mist that's falling down on you that you're inhaling and it's absorbing into your skin is also helping your own health at the same time. So, it's very, very powerful, very powerful, more than you even think, and you just got to think about it that way. Bring it on, let it drip on my head, because, it's so good for us. So, I've listed a couple of other ways that you can try to deter pests, but honestly, the spraying, if you do it weekly, has worked really well. I can't say that I do any of these things because I don't need to, but a lot of people have problems with cutworms and especially vine borers. And by putting things like little toilet paper rolls or even wrapping tin foil around the base of your plant, anything that's going to prevent these little, because they're little worms that just come up out of the ground and climb up your, just eat into the base of your plant, and so it stops that. I remember my mom I think she put tinfoil around the plants back when I was a kid. I'm trying to remember what that was, but so that will work. But I want to say on that note that as far as squash, because this is another question that I see on my group page a lot, people complaining about squash vine borers destroying their plants. Now, there are some squash varieties that are a lot more resistant to squash vine borers. Because their stem is a lot tougher and their stem is actually too tough for them to penetrate. And so you can basically, plant that type of squash. Butternut squash is in that family. It's called Cucurbita machata is the family. And butternut squash is, like I said, in that family, but may not be as resistant as some of the others. I am a huge advocate of tromboncino squash, and I talk about it all the time on my group page because it was basically the first squash I've been able to grow in my garden, and completely, even before I was doing my sprays, completely free of squash vine borers. So, consider that as well. Seek out those, those varieties and save yourself some heartache. So moving on, these yellow sticky traps placed near cucumbers, squash, and eggplant can catch a lot of the pests that buzz back and forth. Some of those would be like flea beetles. They just kind of hop around. They're little tiny black beetles, and they're called flea beetles because of the way they jump around. It can also trap cucumber beetles, things like that. But again, before 2 years ago, before when I had pests in my garden, I tried these sticky traps, and yes, they'll collect a lot of bugs, but that's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the number of pests that's in your garden. So I tried beneficial nematodes, and let me tell you, that year I had and of course this isn't an essential oil, but it's a natural, safe, wonderful thing to use in your garden. I had cucumber beetles so bad, they were destroying mostly my squash. They were going after the squash because they're in the same family. And they were just destroying the flowers. They couldn't get pollinated mostly. So I invested, and I say invested because they're not cheap, but I invested in some beneficial nematodes and sprayed them around my garden. And let me tell you, the next year I can't believe that I went from an infestation that was so bad to none. And I haven't seen one since. So I suspect that now the constant use of using the essential oils is just keeping them from even coming back. So yes, these sticky traps can help. And if you have a small garden and a small problem, that might be all you need. But beneficial nematodes are the bomb. And I'll tell you how they work in a second. I've been working outside, so my sinus issues are coming back again. So I've been battling that for the last couple of days. Beneficial nematodes are little organisms that feed off from the larvae of these pests, these soil-borne pests. So they aren't harmful to anything good because, you know, I think God did it this way. The bad pests are typically in the soil and the good ones are other places, you know. So it just feeds off the larva of, you know, it feeds off from grubs, the larva of beetles, basically, because it's beetles that typically lay their eggs in the soil. Ladybugs do not, they lay their eggs on leaves. So they feed off from these and quickly get rid of them. That year that my infestation was so bad, I applied it twice. And then I applied it the following spring, just for safe measure, and didn't have any. So then this brings you to being careful not to harm your beneficial insects. Like I said, the beneficial nematodes will not harm your beneficial insects, or it doesn't harm earthworms, only this larva, like grubs and beetle larvae. So these guys, and I list some of the beneficial bugs here, but I want to touch on one because some people aren't aware of this, and I feel like it's pretty important. But the braconid wasp, many of you may have seen them in your garden, maybe not, maybe you didn't pay attention, but there you see the little picture up there. It's a little black wasp. It's not a wasp that stings you. So there's no reason to be afraid of them. Right, there it is. So tomato hornworms are the devil. And if any of you have had them, I mean, they can decimate a plant. One worm can decimate a plant, you know, in just 2-3 days. And so for that reason, I always recommend to people, when you're out there watering your plants or messing with your plants, I do a lot of pruning, you know, every couple days, or I probably prune something every single day to keep things thinned out so that everything's healthy. So while I'm out there pruning or watering or whatever it is that I'm doing, my eyes are always just darting around the garden looking for signs of hornworms or other worms. I mean, there's army worms and other worms that can also be in your garden, but they're not as destructive as the hornworm. But so always keep your eyes peeled for them. And the signs are, hornworms are green, same color as your plants, and they're very, very hard to spot. But their droppings are not hard to spot. So keep your eye open for the signs of worms. All worms, same signs. You'll see the holes in your leaves. You know, you can see that, you know, something's been fed on. And then when I see that, then I look below, you'll see droppings from the worm. As they're eating your plant, they're pooping it out down below. Probably makes good fertilizer, right? So look for those little droppings. They can be green or black, just little round pellets. If you see that, if you see these pellets, you look directly up and you will find your worm and get rid of it. but getting back to this wasp, why I wanted to bring that up is some of you may have seen on a hornworm these little white things sticking all over the top of its body. And you're like, what is that? It's kind of gross. Well, that is not eggs. Actually, the arachnid wasp is a parasitic wasp. It lays its eggs inside the hornworm. And this is kind of sad, but the hornworm's have to go. You can't live with them. It lays its eggs inside the hornworm, and the little the larva, when the eggs hatch, the larva feeds its way, eats the hornworm and makes its way out of the hornworm. And so those little white things that you're seeing on the hornworm's back are actually they're little cocoons. And then the cocoons will open and out comes this wasp. So if you see a hornworm on your plants, yes, you must remove it from your plant and you must destroy it, feed it to your chickens, whatever, but it has to come off your plants. You can't move it to another, they will eat your entire plant, an entire tomato plant, peppers. They like these nightshades, eggplant, but their favorite is a tomato. I would say their second favorite plant is a pepper plant. So if you see these worms, remove them. But if you see a worm with these little cocoons on them, leave them. The worm has finished feeding. It's dying at this point. It's finished feeding. It's not going to hurt your plant any longer. But you need to allow these cocoons to finish their life cycle, because these wasps are your friend. So it was a very long story, but it's a very important one.
So basically, when you see a brachynoid or a brachynoid wasp, it's your friend. Just leave it alone.
Yes, leave the wasp alone. Leave its little cocoons that live only on the hornworm alone. Yeah. So you can go to the next page. There's other beneficial critters that you'll find in your garden, and one is the leopard slug. Now, I didn't know this until a couple of years ago. We would get these slugs because our property is pretty moist. We would get these slugs that are like 3 inches long, huge. And I'm like, ew, that's really gross. And if you step on them or try to kill them, they just splatter all over the place. It's pretty gross. And then I realized that they're not actually harmful. They don't eat your plants like the other slugs do. They actually live off from decaying plants. They'll actually eat other slugs. They just like to eat rot and decayed plants. So if you see those giant slugs, leave those alone. But you need to get rid of the other slugs. And while we're talking about that, I've been doing this many, many, many years, and I've tried every single home remedy for slugs that is out there. And again, kind of like the yellow sticky trap, a little cap full of beer in your garden, might attract 4 slugs. Yay! It's killing my slugs. But you have 4 million slugs in your garden. And so it's really not effective. And I've found that the only effective way to treat slugs is Sluggo. It is the bomb. It really works. They're gone. I treat my gardens that are affected by slugs usually just twice, once right away, or when I start seeing some damage, and then I might do it again, just kind of for safe measure a few weeks later, but I never have to do it again, and I never have a problem. So again, it's a tried and true organic method of killing slugs. So now we're going to talk about fungal disease, which I touched on before. Garden fungus causes around 85% of all plant diseases and can quickly become fatal for your plants if left untreated. And this is whether it's your garden vegetable plants or your flowers or, you know, your roses, whatever it may be. It's bad. When you see a sign of it, you need to attack it right away. Parasitic fungi cause damage by poisoning or killing the cells of the plant that they're feeding on. It actually blocks the stomata, which are the breathing pores in the leaves, and it steals the nutrients from the plant. So then the plant, you'll see the leaves, like on a tomato plant with blight, for example, you'll see the leaves die off, you know, turn black and die off, and then sometimes it'll start to affect the stem. But there are other fungal diseases that will affect the stem and the fruit. So, you know, there's a fungal disease for every plant in every part of the plant. And this is how it works. So the best thing to do is to practice those preventative measures. Watch for the first sign of fungal disease and treat your plant immediately. Because I know it's a problem, I just start using it preventatively. I know the plants that are a problem out in my flower gardens, and I'll start treating those early in the spring. And then they are fine. If I don't, they'll literally die. And then in the garden, in the vegetable garden, I spray whenever not every time it rains, but when it's rained for more than a day at a time, so they're sitting there wet for more than a day, that's when the fungal disease starts to grow. And so, you know, if I have, you know, more than a couple days of rain, I go ahead and spray the plants down. And then I do it weekly as a preventative, you know, in between. So here, tea tree essential oil, here is kind of a quick, easy, natural fungicide that you can, a recipe for a quick and easy fungicide that you can use for really easy, you know, if this is all that you have around. Tea tree is, you know, probably the highest, out of all the oils, probably has the highest fungal killing attributes of any of them, I think. And so if nothing else, use this and water and spray your plants. I have a recipe right below here that is the one that I use, and it is powerful. But if nothing else, try this. It may not actually kill the fungal disease, but it may work as a preventative if it's an area that's, you know, not a big problem for you. But right below here is the recipe to the spray that I make, and this is the one that has literally turned my garden around. I mean, it's changed my life in that respect. It's the only reason I'm able to garden. That's how well it works. So if you really want, you know, to bring out the big guns and get rid of that fungal disease, this is what you use. So I have 20 drops of each of these oils that's listed here. And I'm gonna start by saying this may be overkill. This may be way more essential oils than you need in this mix. I don't know. I just know that it works, and I'm not willing to use less to try. I don't have the room, you know, to do experiments and you know, try different gardens and you know, make that risk. So this works, and so this is what I do. So it's 20 drops of each of these oils here, and then 40 drops of the tea tree oil, because again, that is the biggest fungicidal oil that we have. So I always add more of that one. And then I mix that with colloidal silver. Now, colloidal silver is a liquid that is highly antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. It just has, really good, a really good reputation for all of that, kind of like the oils. And so I kind of use that as my base. I make a gallon at a time. No, I actually make 2 gallons at a time because I have a very large garden and I spray everything because I know how well it works. But this recipe is for 1 gallon. So you can buy this colloidal silver on Amazon, and I purchase a gallon at a time, and I believe it's around $65 for a gallon. But keep in mind that 1 gallon of colloidal silver will make 8 gallons of fungicide for you. So it's still much less expensive than buying the stuff in the stores that, in my opinion, doesn't work, because I've tried them all. So you can purchase this on Amazon. I am going to get some links on my probably on my group, so that you can, maybe link to these things to purchase easily, so that you're not having to go to Amazon and find it. But it does come in a half-gallon size as well. There's smaller sizes too, but you need a decent amount of it. So I wouldn't go with less than a half a gallon. It would cost you too much, I think.
Real quick question,
Sure.
comment/question, Shelley. I mean, reiterating the fact that Shelley has a very large garden. For those of you who might have smaller gardens, or like, maybe a couple raised beds or something on your porch you're doing, this is probably going to last them. If they make a whole gallon of it,
Yeah.
it's probably going to last them quite a while, right?
Yes, absolutely. Keep it out of the heat, and it will last you a long time. Or just, cut it in half. 1 cup of colloidal silver, just do it accordingly. And the rest of there's more components to this recipe on the next page, but I just want to since it's another page, I want to get through this before we move on to it.
Kim Tyson's asking, whenever you do the 20 drops each of these, the peppermint, clove, eucalyptus, thyme, rosemary, on guard, purify, cinnamon, oregano, lemongrass, and then the 40 drops of tea tree, you add that to the two cups of colloidal silver, a tablespoon of baking soda, and then you squirt 2 tablespoons of the on guard cleaning concentrate. She's asking if you top it with water to fill the rest of the gallon up.
And that's I apologize, that's on the next page. Okay, it's just awesome. The way this is. Yeah, I would have been able to scroll down, but right now I've just got to kind of stay into this section, and I apologize for that.
You know what we're going to do, Shelley? What we're going to do is we're going to take the imagery from this ebook of yours, and I'm going to make up a quick, easy PowerPoint. So in the future, it'll all be divided up exactly how you want it to for presentation.
And that's funny because I started out with a PowerPoint, and I turned it into I took all the images and made it into an ebook.
Okay.
But I added all this stuff to the ebook, so the PowerPoint is no longer useful to me anyway. But yes, no, that would be a great idea for a presentation like this. But at the time, it took me so long with my Wi-Fi issues just to accomplish this.
You're talking, I don't want to jump the gun, but you're also going to bring up these other oils that you can add to this mix for the pest. Okay, I'm going to be quiet.
Because we're on this page, I'm going to mention this too. I keep circling it, but I realize you're probably not seeing my pointer. But the arborvitae cedarwood citronella. So first of all, these other oils that are prior to this are most of those are going to deter pests as well. And pests hate peppermint, they hate clove, cinnamon. But research shows that arborvitae cedarwood citronella are very, very good for repelling pests. And so I started 2 years ago adding these to my antifungal spray. Now you can make a separate spray with these if you want. If you don't have, if you live in part of the country that you don't have fungal disease issues, then just make a mixture with these oils, the peppermint, the clove, arborvitae, cedarwood, and citronella, and use that as a pest deterrent, and do that once a week and see if that'll keep your pests away. But for me, because I spray once a week for the fungal issues, I go ahead and add these to it. And like I said, that's when I started noticing that I had no pests in my garden, which is, which is crazy. But I want to add this before we move to the next page, where I'll explain how we mix all this together. This besides noticing that I had no pests in my garden, last year, for the first time ever, I don't even like saying this. I gotta knock on wood somewhere. I had no fungal disease in my garden for the first time ever. And you guys, I don't think you can probably even imagine what that means for me, because I don't think anybody can even imagine how big of a problem it's been here. Like, it destroys my entire yard. And so for that to happen last year, I mean, I had none. I didn't even have it on my Swiss chard. It was nice and green and beautiful, and I mean, nothing. My usually my beet, I have nice beets, but the greens I can't use because they have fungal disease. They were also free of fungal disease. So now this is my magic, this is my magic solution here. You can go to the next page. So here's how I mix it. I like using, I have like a 2-cup glass measuring cup, Pyrex, I think it is. That's what I use. Use whatever you want, but I think glass is probably best. And I've discovered that if you do it in this order, it actually emulsifies and kind of stays emulsified. Whereas if I do it in the reverse order or any other order, it doesn't want to emulsify. So this was another accidental discovery. So in the glass container, I dump the oils in, and then I dump the cleaner concentrate, the On Guard cleaner concentrate in. And it's usually about 2 tablespoons, I'm guessing, because I just kind of dump it in. And I stir that vigorously until it's emulsified. Once that's emulsified, then I add the colloidal silver, and then I stir that vigorously again, and then add the baking soda. And that seems to be crucial as well. Adding the baking soda last does better than adding the baking soda earlier. The baking soda kind of gets weird in there. It makes it not want to emulsify. So I'm not a chemist, but I'm sure there's a reason for that. So once you've mixed all of that, then pour it into your water, and then shake it up, and then you're going to want to, when you're spraying it, you're going to want to shake it, occasionally, to make sure that it is staying emulsified. But you want to spray the tops and undersides of leaves and the stem, the entire plant. You can get it on the fruit. There are fungal diseases that attack the fruit as well, such as anthracnose. So, on tomatoes, it's especially good because they seem to be more prone to anthracnose. So I would also spray the fruit as well. And spray it until it's starting to drip, and then you know that you have enough. It's very, very important to 2 things. Don't add more baking soda than what I recommended here. baking soda can damage your plants. Excuse me. If you use too much. And I've played with this and I've found that when I add 2 tablespoons of baking soda, I've seen damage on the plants. And that's mostly on like tomato plants where the leaf curls a little bit at the bottom. And so the solution sits in there a little bit. And then when the sun comes up later on, it kind of burns it a little bit. So when I say damage, that's what I'm talking about. It's more apt to burn. But if you use 1 tablespoon, I never have this problem. And for that reason, also, you don't want to ever spray anything on your plants in the sun, in the direct sun. So you want to hit them early in the morning and give them a couple hours to dry before the sun hits them. And also be careful about spraying your plants, fertilizing your plants, anything like that that can, when it's super, super, super hot, because they're already stressed. And although this spray doesn't seem to stress them ever, but I'm talking about other sprays you might be using. And especially fertilizers, you know, that they can cause the plant a lot of stress. So just be careful of those things. So do we have any questions about that before we move on? Any other questions?
Actually, just for clarity. So basically you're saying on the left side here on the screen, of course, I'm sorry that I can't get 1 page at a time. I don't know why it's doing that. So basically you're just adding the suggested oils that you see here over here once you put the cleaner concentrate into a 2-cup glass measuring cup. You put all that stuff in and throw all the oils into that, shake it up, and that's all mixed in with a garden sprayer.
Right. I do the oils first, and then I add the cleaner concentrate, stir that, and then in that order. And it tells the order on here. But if anybody has questions, please contact me, because I'll be happy to help with that. Or as well as, if you don't have all these oils on hand and you want to know what you do have, what you can use, some is better than nothing. And so, you're welcome to contact me and ask, what I have this, and this, what can I use? How can I make this work for me? And I can help you with that as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, Shelley, real quick, like I totally trust that what you're saying in terms of like adding, for example, if a person only had On Guard and they didn't have the extra eucalyptus or clove, maybe you just do a little extra On Guard, because On Guard actually includes cinnamon, eucalyptus, clove, and it has rosemary, clove, eucalyptus, and cinnamon already in it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying you can contact me and you can eliminate some of that stuff and just use a lot of On Guard, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but if it's not giving you the exact response that you would like, then of course maybe you want to add a little more eucalyptus. Maybe you want to get yourself a bottle of eucalyptus and clove, because
you might learn. And that's kind of why I started adding things, like Purify, for example. I added that because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Because of what it does, and so, I added that, and yes, there's a few things already in there too, but for me, it works. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I researched these. I really did a lot of research before I put this together. And this was before there was a lot of research. There's a lot more research today than there was, 5 years ago when I started playing with this spray.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, and the reason why there's so many is certain oils, for example, rosemary, at that time I wasn't putting rosemary in it. And I learned that rosemary, that they discovered that rosemary kills a very specific strain of fungal disease. And so therefore, to me, it was another, component that I felt was important to have in there, because it kills a strain that the others don't.
Well, that's the thing, is when you're talking nature, it's just like when we're talking about using these oils for the human body, nature is what is the word? Very complex. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to defeat nature, right? You're not going to completely defeat nature. We don't want to, of course. We want to work with nature.
Yeah,
But using this combination you're talking about, you're getting a lot of synergy in between those oils. You're getting a lot of complexity. So when you
yeah,
have varieties, it's not like there's one variety of fungus. You've got probably thousands of different funguses that you can
exactly.
do it. Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why it's important. Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
exactly why it's important. And so, and that's why, I say use all these if you can. If you can't, do what you can. But these are all important because of very specific strains that they kill. In my opinion, I mean, it's just my opinion. But so other things that I like to use in the garden on a regular basis is the On Guard hand sanitizer spray. I have a little tool belt and I have it in there, and I use it to sanitize my tools and my hands in between working with plants, so that you don't spread any possible disease. For example, I it's not just fungal disease. There are other things too. And this happened last year, and now I wish that I would have known what was going on. So my deer, well, I guess they're my deer. The deer penetrated my garden last year. This was the day before Adria's wedding.
So the real
During my
question is,
baby,
Shelley, when you say you're a deer, have you given them names? That's the real question.
some of them have names, yes,
Okay, then
because,
they're probably your deer then.
well,
You've given them names.
yeah, because you do see the same ones every day. But yeah, they somehow they broke into the garden and they destroyed like 5 tomato plants. And one of them, they had they didn't rip the plant out of the soil, but they ripped the plant through um the trellis, pulled on it and pulled and pulled, trying to eat it. So they were just pulling, and while they were doing that, they were scraping the plant. And yeah, they ate it down, but they severely damaged the plant. But it wasn't so short that I couldn't cut it down to a point where it had a leaf node, where I could hope and pray that it would send out a sucker, which they do, a new sucker, and start a new lead, and still give me tomatoes. And so I cut it back, and sure enough, it quickly sent out a new lead, or a couple new leads, because I had like 2, I think, on there at the time, and very quickly started producing fruit. And I was like, wow, that really came back nice. I was so excited. Started producing fruit, and the fruit were about half size. And and suddenly the plant wilted. And I'm like, what? What's happening here? Why is it wilting? It has water, I checked, it had all of its needs, and I just couldn't figure out what was wrong. And it never even occurred to me. And I researched, and there's different wilt disease. There's a viral wilt disease, but there's also a bacterial wilt disease. And I researched and found that a plant that is severely damaged, bacteria gets in the plant, and it can get this bacterial wilt disease. It's called bacterial wilt. And that's obviously what that plant got. Because of the deer damage, it picked up this bacterial wilt. Well, I ended up having to pull the plant out. It died. But in hindsight, if I had realized, I could have been treating the plant for a bacterial disease. You know, spraying, actually, there's plenty of antibacterial oils in that solution that I make. You know, but if I had been hitting it more, you know, and you know, more treating it more specifically for that, I probably could have saved that plant. So so when we talk about spreading disease, you know, I wondered at the time, how many times did I not spray my tools, you know, and I could have spread that and trimmed something off from it and spread it to another plant. So it is an important thing. And the On Guard sanitizer spray works well for that. It's just handy to have because it'll fit in my pocket as well. We use the On Guard cleaner concentrate a lot. We use that to, you know, we keep a water dish outside for the dog, and we have bird baths. And so we use it to clean the bird baths and the pet bowls. We use it to clean pots, anything like that. Because we have fungal disease a lot, we make sure we clean all of our pots before we use them every year. So we use that a lot. We actually have one that we just keep in the garage. And we just dump we don't make a special solution. We just dump the concentrate a little bit into the bird bath, spray water in there, and we have a little brush and we clean it, and then we rinse it really good, and it's safe for them. It's non-toxic. You don't have to worry about anything. And so that's really handy to use out there for that reason. And then, like I mentioned before, the tear shield for us, for the mosquitoes and ticks. So other natural products you can use in the garden. There's Epsom salt, which you've all probably heard of that before. This has a very specific purpose, and personally, I don't use it unless I see a deficiency in my plants. I don't just automatically use it. A lot of people do, but I don't. I just use things like that when I feel like the plant is suffering from a deficiency that Epsom salt might use. I do the same with, you know, calcium deficiencies and iron deficiencies. You know, that sort of thing. So if you go on my group and do a search at the top, I know at least a couple of times probably I've posted a chart showing what different nutrient deficiencies look like in plants and what it's lacking. And so then that's how you know what you can use for that. And sometimes it's not the soil that's lacking the nutrients. Sometimes the plants just aren't able to utilize the nutrients. So that happens from a couple of reasons. If the plant can't utilize the nutrients if you're not watering them properly. For example, if you're not watering them enough, how can they absorb nutrients? You know, they need to be able to absorb water to absorb the nutrients that are in the soil. So you will see nutrient deficiencies when you're not watering enough. You will also see these deficiencies when you're watering too much, because a similar reason, if you're watering too much, or if we get a lot of rain, it can actually wash some of these nutrients away from your plant, and especially in a pot or a container, so that the nutrients aren't there for them to use. But most of the time the nutrients are there, but you're not watering enough for them to use them. But sometimes too much water can actually wash them away, and that's when you need to add these nutrients. So another common one that I recommend is CalMag. It's a solution of calcium, magnesium, and iron, actually. And if I feel like my plants are deficient in calcium, and I don't feel like it's a watering problem, I'll add that to my water. It's just a simple little thing, and I'll just water them with that, or I'll add it to my water soluble fertilizer, so that they get a little drink of that as well. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of blossom end rot, which can happen to tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. It can happen to squash. It's why your little baby squash and cucumbers shrivel up and die before they grow to any size. That's a calcium deficiency, and a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, why? They think that they're not getting pollinated, but most of the time when they get to that size, they're getting pollinated. They're just they're not getting enough calcium to finish growing. So just watch for those things and treat accordingly. And if you have questions with that stuff, you can ask me again. So then we have the diatomaceous earth, which hi Kim, sorry, see ya. We'll talk soon. Diatomaceous earth has a lot of uses. I don't use it a ton because I have other things that, like, for example, I don't have a lot of ants. I do have some ants, but aphids, bed bugs, cockroaches, earwigs, mites, snails, slugs in my garden. But it is effective for that because it is a very, very fine powder, but it's very sharp, microscopically very sharp edges. And so when these little critters walk across, if you sprinkle it in your garden and these little critters walk across it, it actually cuts them. And so that's what makes it effective. But you need to be very, very careful when you use this. Maybe wear a mask so that you don't, and that's another reason why I don't use it, is because I'm just very, very sensitive to dust and things, which is why I'm struggling to talk right now. I've been working in leaves. And so be careful about breathing this stuff in because it's super, super fine. White vinegar is a good natural weed killer. And here it tells how to use it, but be very, very careful using this because it's not, it doesn't know a weed from a garden plant. So don't use it near a plant you don't want to kill. Use it like in cracks and crevices, cracks in your sidewalk, that sort of thing. It's great, but be careful around your plants with it because it will, changes the pH of the soil, which kills the plant. And so just be careful with that. But washing your garden vegetables works great with that. I do this. And I add a few drops of lemon oil to that too, because I like to. You can go to the next page. So a few other ways that you can use essential oils in the garden, kind of unique applications, so to speak. When using sprays for various things, the typical ratio is 20 drops of essential oil to 1 gallon of water. As you know, I use a lot more than that, but this is what's been taught. I use a lot more than that, but what I'm using is very, very powerful and it works. So, but that's a general guide. Hanging strips of cloth in your garden and putting drops of oil on there might deter pests as well. I've not tried this, but as I was reading through this again, it reminded me, I was like, last year when I had to put up a fence quickly because of the deer, once they get in your garden, figure out how to get in your garden, there's no stopping them. And so I have little cloth pieces tied around wire at the top so that they see the because they're not used to it being there. And, I figure maybe adding some drops of oil to that, so that when they come up there, maybe that'll kind of make them turn around and walk away and say, no, there's nothing here for me. So I'm going to try that this year. You can put little cartons of cotton, that was hard to say, and put some oils on that. You can soak a string in a solution of water and essential oils, and put that between your rows. So there's a lot of things that you can do to use them. You just need to use them. They will definitely help. They're going to smell stronger than the actual herb if you're, interplanting herbs in your garden, and if you're still having a problem here and there, try some of these methods. So, the last page here, adulteration cheats. Charlie, you want to touch on that?
Sure. I mean,
I think you can explain it.
Since we're over on time, I'll just be real quick.
Okay, sure.
As we talk about on, all of these Wednesday evening, 8 p.m., typically we try to stay within 45 to 60 minutes. But we had a lot of information to cover here, so that's perfectly fine. I'm not complaining to you, Shelley. Just for those of you who are new and inviting people in, we're doing these every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard, and typically we do about 45 to 60 minutes. So just because we had a little bit longer tonight, don't think this happening every Wednesday. And if you have to go, of course, you can always go. But just like all the other presentations, we talk a little bit about adulteration. There are a lot of companies out there selling essential oils now, especially over the last decade. A lot of companies have kind of jumped onto the essential oil train, just because the world is starting to use essential oils in ways they never have before, including, doctors and chiropractors, and even modern medicine. People are starting to realize how powerful they are. That just brings on an onslaught of companies who adulterate their oils, meaning they put other things. The simplest way to say is that it's not pure essential oil. It's adulterated with fillers, contaminants, synthetic additives. And so that's the reason why we're suggesting doTERRA. Shelley's been using this brand. I've been using it for close to 15 years at this point. Shelley's been using this in her garden and with great success. So don't try to cut corners and buy a cheap oil, because you're probably not going to get the same. For sure, you're not going to get the same when dealing with, health issues and challenges with the human body. And I'm guessing you're probably going to have similar outcomes if you're trying to use a cheap adulterated oil on plants. And of course, I wouldn't want to throw synthetic junk onto my plants that I'm going to eat. So that's why you don't compromise.
And and as a disclaimer, I like to point that out too, that, I only use the doTERRA oils for this, and I can't guarantee, and in fact, I know that some of these other oils, I would not have the success that I have if I were using something else. I mean, I wouldn't. That's just how it is.
Absolutely.
I know, I'm completely confident with that.
So at the bottom of this page, and I'll just close out for us, Shelley, if that's okay, give your voice a little break. Yep. You'll see at the bottom of the screen here, this shows her page, which is the Garden Club, which is the educational group. And then, of course, she also has another page that's called Bountiful Earth Culinary Gardens, which focuses a lot on recipes and food and what's come out of our garden.
Actually, no, the Bountiful Earth Garden Club is the group, the educational group with the discussions. The other one is just my business page, where I offer my services to do things like this, to teach, have people come to my garden, that sort of thing. So that's kind of a different business, more business focused, whereas the Bountiful Earth Garden Club is just, a bunch of people that I'm educating, and people can ask questions and, learn a ton. There's a ton of information on there.
I know. I see it. So Shelley's nice enough to throw her phone number and also her email address, so you can approach her that way. Again, I'm going to go ahead and throw the ebook that we're showing here, and you saw this information. That way you don't have to worry about trying to like maybe if you didn't get everything screenshotted, or there's a lot of information here, I will throw that into the group as well, so you can grab it and download it. And Shelly's making that available to you, which is really kind. With all of that said, what I'm going to do is jump in real quick just to see if there's any questions. I think we answered a couple questions during. Does anyone have questions before we close out for the night for Shelly in particular? Looks like we still have a few people left.
And I apologize for taking this so long. I've done this presentation several times and I've never taken over an hour. But I think the difference this time was explaining, because last summer was the summer that I had the huge breakthrough. And so I
I
just
think it's
wanted
great.
to, yeah,
I think it's great.
I just really wanted to share that with people to, so that
Judy saying, thank you so much, Shelly. Great information. Of course,
You're
you saw
welcome.
Kim said, thank you very much. I want to thank you very much, Shelly. I've learned a lot tonight just by listening. It's great.
Awesome.
I mean, literally anything you do, anything you're passionate about, Essential Oils just makes it better.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Becky Mills says, thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
All right, we're going to sign off. Thanks everybody for coming. Again, there'll be a replay in the group. Shelly, and I'll send you also the replay. So if you want to use it or throw it up somewhere, you can have that as well.
All right. And I appreciate you helping me out with this, Charlie. Obviously, I didn't have any issues with the Wi-Fi, but I've literally unhooked every single thing in my house that's hooked to Wi-Fi.
That worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
I think
all right.
so.
I appreciate you. I'm going to sign off. Everybody, thank you. Have a great night, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.